2023. May we have the roll call, please?
Chair McGill,
Here.
Vice Chair Feck,
Here.
Commissioner Aldana,
Present.
Commissioner Chang, Commissioner Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Lesnar Buxton,
You.
Commissioner Unanderla-Berge.
Here.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
All right. Do we have any written public comment? I did not see any.
No.
No, okay, yeah. All right, that brings us to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. Total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. I don't have any speaker slips. Your comment will come when we get to the agenda item. Do we have anybody online?
We do not.
Okay, great, thank you. That brings us to the Youth Council report. I think we have one this month.
Hi everyone, my name is Kavya Suresh. I am the Vice Chair for the Santa Barbara Youth Council this year, and I'm here to just provide a brief update on Youth Council events and activities. So in October of 2022, the Youth Council applied for the Youth Making Change grant that is offered by the Fund for Santa Barbara to fund youth-led projects in the community seeking to just improve social justice. And the Youth Council is proud to announce that on February 1st, we received notice that we were one of the recipients of the grant, which was a really great opportunity. And the project that we're getting funding for is a project that is intended to improve civic engagement among youth in the community. We'll be using this grant funding of $1,048 to host the 2023 Youth Council Speak Out. And this question and answer style forum is really going to help us bridge that gap that exists between youth and local government that exists right now. And we're really looking forward to that. Our topics that we'll be covering at this kind of Q&A forum type event include environmental justice, safe public spaces and transportation, community health and public safety, as well as education, equity, and inclusion. These topics were selected by Youth Council that include our unique perspectives, our unique input and experience as teens in the community, and also from the presentations that we've received from different community members, including State Street Master Planner Tess Harris, who talked to us about public spaces for teens, and also Moms Demand Action, who talked to us about gun violence and public safety. And we believe that the Youth Speak Out this year is really going to allow youth to give their voices and lend them to the conversations that are happening within city government to build long-lasting relationships in our community and set a precedent of government that centers youth voices. As people always say, you know, youth are the future. And we also hope to amplify youth voices and amplify youth leadership to create, again, a precedent of centering the voices of the young folks in our community. And our event is set to take place in mid-April, and it's open to all youth and community members who wish to be part of this powerful dialogue. And we're looking forward to providing more information about the event, date, time, et cetera, soon when that's available. But yeah, we are just really excited to be able to announce the work that Youth Council is doing and also extend a hand in any way you want to support. We are more than welcome to have that conversation as well. So I thank you so much for your time, and if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
I don't have any questions. I see Commissioner Aldana. I will turn it to you.
I'd just like to congratulate you for receiving the grant and
Thank you.
for this awesome report.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
Yep, I will echo that. It's, I think I've said it many times, I really am encouraged and impressed with the degree of civic involvement and enthusiasm that the Youth Council has. And you don't shy away from the hard topics, which is great. It speaks well for the future.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, all I can say is keep on going. And certainly, I'm also really encouraged by the degree of publicity the Speak Out's already getting. So hopefully that means you will get a great turnout.
Yes, and that's all thanks to our amazing advisor, Nicole, right there. She's so supportive, and we love her so much, so.
Thank you, thank you too. All right, anything else? Great job. Yeah, great job, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, it's time for the committee assignment reports. I dare you to top that. I will start with Commissioner Aldana.
I cannot top it. So, not just been busy with the rain, but I did not attend the Neighborhood Advisory Council. There was no quorum. And to be quite honest, I think that advisory committee should turn into a commission. That's just my opinion, for what it's worth. And that's basically it for
Okay.
today.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark.
Sadly, I was unable to attend a Street Trade Advisory Committee meeting. I had an unexpected visit from my son from out of town, so I did on my own go visit all the trees. I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lesnar Buxton.
I was unable to attend the youth council meeting.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Unanda LaBerge.
The Arts and Crafts Commission canceled their meeting because it was on one of our Tuesday Stormageddons.
And they haven't been showing a lot of art lately either. Yeah. And Vice Chair Fleck.
I was unable to attend the youth council. I was out of town.
Okay, well, I did go to the park meeting, to the Park Foundation meeting last week. Not a lot to report, usual review of financials and just outstanding action items around board structure and policy. All right. Okay, commission and staff communications, anything to report? Director Zachary?
Chair McGill and members of the commission, it doesn't quite fit under ceremonial items, although it is an opportunity to recognize staff. I would like to let the commission know that Rose Navarez is going to be transferring to a new position in the department as the admin analyst. And we will be recruiting to fill her very big shoes in her current position, but she's staying with Parks and Recreation, which is great. And Adam Porte, who came to the city as a recreation coordinator, moved into a supervising position, is now filling the second recreation manager position. He was promoted to that at the same time Rose was. So we finally have a full slate of management staff for Parks and Recreation that has not been full since I became the director 7.5 years ago. So we've had a vacancy for a very long time, and I'm very happy that it's filled and Adam is filling those shoes. And we'll keep you posted on how we will find a way to fill Rose's shoes too. Thank you.
All right, well, congratulations, Director Zachary, and finally getting staffed up. Congratulations, Adam, on the promotion, and Rose, delighted to see we have your new position and delighted that you're staying with the department. That brings us to ceremonial items. Do we have any this month?
Chair McGill, Commissioners, we have one. Andre Romero, who's a park ranger in our department, was recognized for 10 years of service to the city. Andre actually came to us via the police department, so he's been on our staff, I believe, a year and a half, or just over a year and a half. But we are happy to have him on board and to fill out, again, another example of where we had a vacancy for a very long time, and now we actually have the 4 park rangers we're supposed to have. And so we're pleased because it helps us implement all the programs and services we provide throughout the city.
Yep, well, congratulations to Andre Romero. 10 years is a good long time, and the park ranger role, as few as there are, they sure provide a vital service to in support of the parks. I'm always delighted to say hello when I run into one of them when I'm in one of our parks. All right, so thank you for that. That takes us to the minutes and from the last meeting. and the recommendation is that the commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the regular meeting of February 22nd, 2023. Do I have a motion from someone? Commissioner Aldana, followed by Commissioner Clark.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Listen. Okay.
For,
I'll second.
and that was for Wednesday, February 22nd.
Thank you very much. This thing is sometimes a bit cumbersome.
I'd like to make a motion to get rid of these. Just kidding.
I'll second that. All right, we'll discuss the motion at hand, which is the minutes. Any discussion? All in favor, do we have to do a vote, or can we do all in favor? Okay. All right, are we all in?
I voted? Oh, lock.
Yes.
Oh, it's me, sorry. Okay. Or-
Oh, interesting.
Okay, yeah, this is your first time seeing this? Yeah. Okay, there we are. All right. And that brings us to the Street Tree Advisory Committee, and we will start with the trees on Milpas Street. Mr. Slack, over to you.
Good afternoon, Chair McGill and Commissioners. The first Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to remove a total of 9 trees. It's 4 fern pines, 5 Mexican fan palms, and 1 small coral tree. These are all located on South Milpas, essentially at 225 and 233 South Milpas Street. The applicant for this project is the City of Santa Barbara Public Works Department. This project is part of the continued highway improvements. So essentially the project for this area adds an additional turn lane onto the southbound 101. That addition of the turn lane requires a realignment of Milpas, so the 2 northbound lanes actually get pushed towards the properties quite a bit, directly in line where the trees are, and that's necessitating the tree removal. If there's any questions about sort of the mechanics of the project, we do have Public Works staff here that can answer specifics in relation to the road reconfiguration. But again, the sidewalk and road requires realignment, directly impacting the 4 fern pines, which are street trees, and then the other 5 trees sit at the corner there in the public right-of-way still. The committee reviewed the project, went to the site, looked at the trees. The trees were reasonably maintained in pretty good health. The project was pretty quickly determined to be a reasonable and practical development of property. And the committee recommended that the commission approve the application as proposed. The applicant did propose 9 replacement trees, so 1-to-1 replacement. The one important thing to note, the current street tree designation for the 200 block of South Milpas is the New Zealand Christmas tree. If you were on site, you can't find one because there isn't one. So the committee made a request that we reevaluate the designation. So next month during the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting, we're going to look at new street tree designation options for the 100, 200, 300, and 400 block of South Milpas. Just looking at it in full context in anticipation of replacing the trees for this part of the project.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Slack? Commissioner Aldana.
Yes, as far as the additional lane, there's already 2 lanes, correct? So it'd be a question for Public Works.
Come on.
Worries. Commissioner Aldana, essentially what we're actually doing to clarify is we're adding a left turn lane only onto Tosh there. So there'll be 3 left turn lanes, 2 existing that go onto the on-ramp southbound, Highway 101, and then that left turn only. What that allows us to do is have a simultaneous movement of traffic. Right now, this does not occur, of left turn movement onto southbound 101, and then the off-ramp, the hook ramp, off-ramp southbound will be able to also go right turn simultaneously.
Okay, thank you very much.
And this would also help when the new hotel is built, correct? I mean, that's kind of for that reason also?
This project is really just tied to the highway widening project. It was part of the AR process.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark.
Just, I'm having problems with my tree math. You said a 1-to-1 replacement, and there's 10 trees listed here under tree species, and there's going to be 9 replacement trees. What am I missing?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, my math is incorrect, not yours. There was 9 replacement trees. I think that when we were talking about replacement trees, we were kind of matching the street trees and the parkway trees. The coral tree is pretty close to being dead right now, but we went ahead and just included it in the application. It would have technically qualified for an exemption.
Okay, thanks. Any further questions?
Yes.
Yeah, now, I just want to counter with, our preview is the trees, not the road.
Okay. Well, it pertains to what's next to the tree. Because I know there's a drainage there. You're aware of that?
Yeah, we'll get real quick, and then just,
Yeah.
again, I do want to remind, we are looking at trees, we aren't Public Works.
So I was just wondering, is it going to interfere with that drainage? And who's the actual owner of that corner? Because that's always been an issue.
Yeah, I can clarify that. That is city right-of-way. This is one of the rare cases where we actually have city right-of-way in our favor, and we can push back the sidewalk there. But that area is within city right-of-way. Part of it is, but the drainage that you're talking about will be reconstructed in that area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I will turn it over for public comment. I do not have any speaker slips. Do we have anybody online?
We do not.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, then, I will turn it over for discussion or a motion as appropriate. Commissioner Clark.
I'm prepared to make a motion if nobody has anything to discuss. I would like to make a motion to concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation that the commission approve the removals at 225 and 233 South Milpas Street as proposed on their application, and condition being that they plant the 9 replacement trees.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, if not, then we will take it to a vote. Are we there? All right. We have a unanimous approval. All right, that takes us to Carrillo.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item for review is the request to remove an evergreen ash located within the front setback of the property at 810 East Carrillo Street. The applicant listed a couple different reasons on the application for removal. The tree is located under utility lines, so it's subject to pretty frequent utility pruning by Southern California Edison subcontractors, and also damage to surrounding hardscape, including a retaining wall that's essentially a lot line wall separating the two properties. The committee reviewed the tree, quickly made comments about it being in a very poor location. It is, again, subject to utility pruning frequently by Edison. As we've seen recently, evergreen ash can be a very large tree. This is a very tight spot, and if you were able to make a site visit, there was pretty considerable damage to that, especially the retaining wall or the lot line wall that separated the two properties, as well as the damage to the concrete close by to the tree. It was pretty quick consensus from the committee that it made practical sense to remove the tree. They looked at replanting options. It's pretty limited. Carrillo Street's kind of unique. The parkways are narrow. There's not a lot of really good options, but they did determined that it made practical sense to put something back somewhere. The applicant did not express an interest in replacing the tree on the application, but after review, the committee made a recommendation to approve the removal of the tree at 810 East Carrillo Street on the condition that a replacement tree be planted that can achieve 20 feet of height at maturity, with the logic behind that that condition essentially going back in the same spot with a smaller tree that could fill in that area, provide a little bit of canopy, but also not be subject to the, the continued utility pruning that the existing tree is subjected to. I did reach out to the applicant in advance of the meeting, let them know of the condition from the committee, and they were pretty comfortable with the condition requiring a replacement tree.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Slack? Okay, I've got one quick one. The retaining wall, a replacement tree, what kind of replacement tree would need to be planted to not create an issue for the retaining wall? I mean, in other words, does the retaining wall issue go away even with the new tree planted? And that's not well said, but
I think I'm not sure it's a retaining wall. I think it's a lot line.
it didn't look like a retaining wall to
Yeah.
me, but it was kind of it kind of just looked like cinder blocks in a line, basically.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I believe, technically you probably call it a lot line wall and not a retaining wall. It's really not holding too much back. Maybe it's holding the tree back a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of, the damage that's there is already existing, but there's plenty of space, and I think part of what the committee was looking at is the concrete that's already disrupted there could easily be removed, open that area up more, and be a more conducive location for a replacement tree. But the existing damage to the lot line wall's going to be there until some time when the homeowners decide to make those repairs.
Yep. Commissioner Clark.
Sorry, will the repeated pruning to the tree, is that going to cause it long-term, health issues from the utility line pruning?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, do you mean the existing tree or the
Existing tree.
all pruning's essentially an injury, more or less, so it does cause the plant stress. We looked at one of these in depth in a much different scenario a couple months back where it had a big full canopy. So it's a big tree, it's very tough. So that, it's one of the tougher urban trees. So, it's not going to kill the tree, certainly, but it's more just the sort of the nuisance and the unsightliness of it being flat topped, every probably 6 months, I would imagine, by the utility company due to its presence under the utility lines.
Commissioner Hernando-LaBerge.
Thank you. I'm trying to understand the grounds under which you're agreeing to the removal. I don't have the little card in front of me, but we have the specific grounds that are to be relied upon, and it seems like we've had similar trees, similar complaints before that we've denied. Why is this one being approved?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Hernando-LaBerge, I did neglect to mention the committee during their recommendation to approve the removal was to make that the commission could make the finding of good forest management, essentially. Pretty much the tree's already causing damage to the structure. Even with the frequent utility pruning, the tree's trunk will still increase in diameter, the roots will still increase in diameter, leading to continued damage, surrounding the tree with the hardscape, and that it made practical sense to pivot, go to a smaller tree that's not going to cause any further damage, and will retain canopy without losing significant amounts of canopy to utility pruning.
Okay, thank you. With that, I don't have any speaker slips, so I'm going to public comment. And do we have anybody online?
We do not.
Okay, great, thanks. At which point I will open it up for discussion and/or motion. Okay. I will say that I was a little surprised that it wasn't as big as I expected it to be. the tree itself. I was expecting some behemoth, the way it was described, and it was, it's kind of like a normal-looking tree. And so I was just, I don't know, I'm not 100% convinced, particularly given some of the other things that we've looked at, though I wasn't aware that the utility pruning was actually every 6 months. That seems frequent. I mean, is that unusually frequent, or is?
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, that's just an estimate.
Yeah.
I would have to consult with Edison to make sure. The nominal voltage that the conductor carries really dictates the distance required from the vegetation to the utility lines. There, it's quite a bit. This tree grows very frequently, which was why I was making the estimate that it probably occurs more than once a year.
Okay. Commissioner Clark, go ahead.
Is this the same species of tree that was in front of the Philbrook house, the one that I'm trying to remember, that was on our last month's agenda? The giant tree that spreads?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, that's correct, yeah. So it's an evergreen ash. There was quite a bit of discussion during that item. It was, I forget the street, but it was a large evergreen ash located in the front yard. The commission, there was a majority vote supporting its removal due to just the weedy nature of the tree and the fact that it pops up everywhere all around town, naturally germinates. The commission did ultimately vote to deny that application,
Right.
but yes, it was the same tree.
The same tree, same species, okay. Because that tree was huge.
Huge, it was huge, yeah. Yeah.
Are you struggling because you're looking forward at precedent setting?
A little bit precedent and a little bit, it just, the tree just didn't seem that huge. Didn't seem that huge for the space. I do appreciate, though, that it's a fast-growing tree directly underneath major utility lines. And I was maybe a little less convinced about the lot line wall, though looking at the photo, you can see how badly the driveway concrete has been uplifted. So I guess it's the uplift of the driveway and the frequency of pruning of a fast-growing tree in a very bad spot relative to utility lines sways me towards allowing the removal. I'm a little concerned that it's just not that huge a tree, given, the size of tree for space argument is less persuasive to me.
I'm going to go as far as making a motion to go ahead and,
Well, I think there was somebody ahead of you, and then I'll let, so,
Okay.
yeah, sorry, I'm not doing a good job of looking at my screen today. Go ahead, Commissioner Armando-Labarge.
So the pruning that occurs for this tree is paid for by the utility company, not the homeowner, not the city?
And Chair McGill and Commissioner Unander-Laberge, that's correct. So when Edison trims, their entire goal is just to create like vertical distance between the vegetation and the utilities. And so in the picture, what we're seeing is predominantly would be done by Edison. So anything like drooping growth, or if you wanted to manage the lateral growth of the canopy, that would be done by the homeowner since the tree's private. But yeah, the top-down pruning is essentially always done by Edison proactively. And that's true throughout the city. They absorb all costs for all of the utility pruning.
And so they're monitoring it, then the homeowner doesn't need to contact them to say, hey, come look at this tree.
No, that's correct. They're increasingly more proactive with their vegetation pruning, especially in the last several years with all the fires. So they oftentimes will trim the required distance, and then they try to add on and essentially estimating additional growth for the year to make sure that they're always going to have the minimum required distance. And then just to provide a little bit more clarity from the committee's comments, it is a relatively small tree. The pruning does not stop like the root development and growth, and that was really sort of the driving factor. I don't think that the committee saw that the utility pruning was really like that strong of a reason to remove the tree. It was more that the tree's root system's still going to continue to grow, cause damage to the asphalt driveway. There was pretty visible damage. You can't see it in the photograph because it's behind the wall, behind the tree. There was roots there, the wall was damaged, and there was consensus there was going to be continued damage from the root system. I don't think that there was a lot of concern from the utility pruning.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, okay. You,
Yes, I'll go as far as making the motion and concurring with the street tree committee, that the commission approve the removal on the condition that the applicant replace the setback tree that can achieve the 20-foot in height at maturity. And basically, I say that because the tree's going to continue to get hacked, and it's not healthy for the tree.
okay, thank you. And you are doing it on the principles of good forest management?
Correct.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We've had some discussion. Do we have any further discussion?
I guess I haven't made a decision. I'm still struggling with it in terms of setting precedent and the fact that we usually don't remove trees for hardscape damage. I do understand it's going to get huge, and it's going to not be aesthetically pleasing due to the repeated pruning if it's going to look like a flat top tree. But I'm still just struggling with the, I trust the Street Tree Advisory Committee and their infinite wisdom. I just would be worried of setting precedent for hardscape and.
Yeah, and I would say my experience is we have it's sort of with hardscape, it depends. I mean, we do approve it depending on what it is and the degree of it. We don't always approve it. I don't think we have a hard and fast yay or nay on hardscape. As, you know, littering, yes, we don't approve littering. Hardscape, I think we frequently approve hardscape, depending on what and where.
This may be one of those, I've heard them say before, like, this tree has no future. Like, there's going to be a point where this tree just is too big.
Yeah.
And perhaps it would be good forest management to replace it with a tree that does actually have a future, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I understand. All right, if we are talked out, I'm going to say let's take it to a vote and see where we land. Okay, after all that. Thank you. All right, thank you. All right, that takes us to Ulan Court.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item for review is a request to remove a deodar cedar. This is located within the front setback of the property at 234 Ulan Court. The applicant requested removal of the tree primarily due to damage to the retaining wall. In this case, I think it's safe to call this a retaining wall in front of the property. You can't see it as well from the photograph, but there's pretty significant cracks on essentially kind of both sides of the apex of the corner there, all the way from the relatively new curb that's been installed to the top of the retaining wall of the property. The committee reviewed the tree, noted it was a pretty fantastic specimen. It has like a twin up near the driveway as well that they made reference to. It's been super well maintained, and it's a very healthy tree. The conversation quickly focused on the wall, options for the wall. I think there was consensus that the tree, even though it's relatively close to the wall and the root system is certainly impacted by the retaining wall on that side, that the tree appeared to be very structurally stable. Most of the roots would move back towards the open front yard as a result of adaptive growth. The committee, they discussed several options for what you would do with the wall. There appeared, in their opinion, there was general consensus that repairs could be made without causing detrimental damage to the tree. And that would be in the event that the wall actually was replaced. It really kind of, that's I think the catalyst is the wall going to be replaced or not? And in some instances, we've seen properties where, the damage is not structural, it's more of a cosmetic thing, and people opt to just not make those repairs. And ultimately, after review, the committee determined the tree was of such significant value to the property and to the street that they made a recommendation to deny the deodar cedar at 234 Ulan Court.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Mr. Slack? So if no one does, I do. I guess, help me understand what's the difference between hardscape damage here and hardscape damage at the tree we just looked at, and why one is okay to remove and the other isn't.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I think that's a great question. I think there's several factors there. I think it's, it's important to acknowledge that the committee has an opinion on evergreen ash in general, right? I think when you look at the deodar cedar, I neglected to mention, most of them in town are very old. This tree also has probably been on the property for a really significant number of years, decades. Not expecting a lot of continued growth. It's taken a considerable time for this wall damage to develop, and it's not like we would expect extreme continued damage of the wall, and that was part of the discussion on site. So I think when you look at the species value, deodar cedar is held in a much higher value. This is a tree that has, a full canopy, contributes pretty significantly to the street in the corner. You take into consider the age, just the natural habit of the tree's root system, and all of those things lead you to make an informed sort of estimation that the wall damage wouldn't be as significant in the long term, as opposed to a relatively young evergreen ash that has a history of causing extensive hardscape disruption, regardless of whether it's a retaining wall or a lot line wall or a sidewalk or road.
Yeah. I would say that the hardscape damage in person looks a lot worse than it does in the photo. It's noticeable. Yeah. No other, okay. And what would be entailed with, was there any discussion of what repairs would entail?
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, I think that there's certainly options. There's always ways of doing things. It would really a lot of that depends on the homeowner, right? Because it's their property. So they would have to make a decision on what type of repairs they wanted to make. You could replace in like kind, which might require some subtle root pruning. You could look at other options that would narrow the width of what you used in terms of the retaining wall. That would provide space for the tree's root system, so you wouldn't have to do as much root pruning. So there's lots of options, but that really rests on the property owner's, wishes and decisions in terms of the wall. So there's multiple ways of approaching this situation in terms of making these repairs.
Yeah, the reason behind my question is aesthetically, it's certainly, I would suspect it's something many homeowners would choose to do, but it would be of concern if you got into a do loop of repeated repair and crack.
Yeah, Chair McGill and Commissioners, I think that's an honest concern. I think, again, the committee, their evaluation of it in terms of the age of the tree and just the behavior of that species, that if repairs were made, that it probably would be a one and done situation. But again, it's entirely up to the homeowner to make that decision, and the method of repair. You could do like stacked cobblestone, or again, you could use like a narrower block. There's a lot of different ways of approaching it, but again, it's private property, and it would be up to the homeowner to make the decision on what they wanted to do with the retaining wall.
Okay. Since there are no other questions, excuse me for just a second. We're about to get to you. Okay. Okay, so that does bring me to public comment. We do have a speaker, and it's Mr. Julio Peterkin. And if you would come forward, the way this process works, since I'm guessing this is new for you, is that you will have 2 minutes to basically speak, and at that point, if anybody has any further questions for you, but you will have 2 minutes to speak, and then the commission will deliberate and take a decision.
Well, as I come forward, I can see the cracks in the wall.
Okay, why don't we just get set up, and then as soon as you're ready, why don't we restart the clock here yeah.
Okay.
So we'll just go ahead and start the clock in now.
As I look at the wall, the cracks from where I was sitting, the cracks didn't seem to be that wall. But it's a better picture as I look at it now. And the cracks are really significant. I'm not into arbor, beautiful trees or anything, but I'm concerned about the winds we've had recently, and I don't know how much the wind might blow that tree and damage and really damage the wall. And if someone could get injured, I'm really concerned about that. And I've had a question as to whether or not someone of the experts could go down into the tree roots and cut the roots somehow, but I don't know if that's feasible. And that way stop the cracking of the tree, of the wall. That's a question I would have with the people that are in charge of doing that type thing. But I am concerned about the tree being blown over with the high winds we've had and damage the wall and also possibly cause an injury to somebody. That's my concern, primary concern with it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good, thank you very much.
Sure.
So with that, I think as I open up to the discussion, I'm going to ask two questions of Mr. Slack, and then we can open to discussion. And it's really in reference to the issues raised by Mr. Peterkin. Can you speak to the risk posed by the recent winds, or any high winds, by the risk posed to this property? Basically, it goes to the structural stability of the tree and risk with the rains and the wind.
And Chair McGill and Commissioners, based on our site visit, the committee, and I can say as well as staff, again, we're talking about this species, the deodar cedar. It's something that is usually we would call like pretty well behaved. It's not something that we would associate with like total tree failure, where you get like a root plate failure and you're losing the whole tree, like what we've seen, unfortunately several times over the last several months. There's nothing to suggest root damage, right? The site soil seems to be, there's really no been changes of grade or anything like that. The wall appears to be the original wall. So again, all of those things speak to probably what should be a pretty functional root system. And the tree itself looks to be pretty healthy. I think I would have to caution that if somebody was to really like speak in detail about a tree's structural stability, it should be evaluated by a private arborist, since it's on private property, and do like a formal risk assessment. Like our evaluation could qualify as like a level 1 visual, like a limited visual assessment. And everything that we saw on site, really in terms of the structural integrity of the tree, looked to be quite good. It's also still here, right? It's survived countless storms over several decades, heinous windstorms, so those are all really positive indicators. And a lot of times when you see tree failure, it's usually due to root disturbance that leads to like a decay pathogen entering and then compromising like the structural integrity. And so we don't see those there. And I forget your second question.
I didn't ask it yet.
Oh, good, thank you.
My second question was, but thank you. My second question really gets, again, going back to Mr. Peterkin's concern. It sounded like he has really just some basic questions about root pruning and how it works and what can or cannot be done. Would it be possible for him to liaise with any members of your staff to help understand those concerns and help him assess his options?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, we're always happy to like provide as much advice, I guess, as possible. You know, the thing that's tricky about this would be the same thing like somebody talks to us about a street tree there's a sidewalk uplift. We can, you know, sort of glean some things from what we see, but really, if the only way to like make an informed decision about route management would be to demo the wall where you could actually see what you were going to be dealing with, right? That's the only way to know for sure what you're going to be dealing with is to actually be able to see it. I think that there presents several options, as we talked about earlier during the recap of the committee's review and discussion about the tree. And, you know, I think, again, there was consensus on their end that you could probably retain the tree and fix the wall if that was the goal.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not suggesting that you can answer all the questions, but it sounds like just some basic information, kind of the 101 primer on how this all works and what kind of questions to ask and options. If you could be available for that was really my question.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, yeah, I mean, I think that's a core component of
Yeah.
being the city arborist, is
And
being
I just
available for.
really wanted to kind of get that out in the open so that the applicant's aware that possibility is out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Commissioner Unander-LaBerge, and then I see another, yes, Commissioner Aldana.
Thank you. So given the age of this tree and what that would mean for its root structure, is the cracking in the wall, the degradation of the wall likely to continue, or is this a situation where this happened and then the roots went further down and are not necessarily going to be doing any more disruption to the wall given age of the tree and its growth patterns or development?
And Chair McGill and Commissioner Unander-LaBerge, it's a complicated question. Again, it kind of goes back to making a decision about root pruning. I think when you look at the tree's age and you look at options that are available for repair, I think that you could likely consider that there would be a low probability of continued damage. You know, the one thing that we see a lot that doesn't get talked about with hardscape damage in general is just all of the other elements. Like water is the most destructive element on planet Earth. You know, it'll slowly over time will drill a hole through granite, you know. So when you have like a raised front yard like this and you've got water and you've got cracking, and there's no doubt that the tree played a huge factor in this, but there's other things. The earth moves around here quite a bit. You've got shrinking and expanding soils, and then you've got water also. It's like a real complicating factor in terms of like leading to additional cracking or damage. So it's really tough to say how significant, you know, the roots are in relation to these other things. But again, I think if the wall was repaired, there's a low likelihood of it being damaged again in the future.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and clay soil does wonders. Commissioner Aldana.
Yes, as far as this gentleman, Mr. Julio, one of his concerns was if the tree fell. Yes. Okay, so let's just say we vote to leave it there, and next year it does fall. Here he tried to deal with the situation because he thought it was a liability. And if it does fall and it hurts somebody, who's responsible for that?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Aldana, another complicated question to answer. In order to give like a formal response, you know, I think that's something that we would take back to the city attorney's office. But in discussions with them, the fact that the city has regulations on certain things does not preclude the owner from being the tree owner. They own the tree, right? It's similar to every other situation that we've looked at. The reason I think we would fall back on exemption criteria that allows for the removal of a tree. Say, for example, we had a report that, you know, spoke and provided objective information to why a tree needed to be removed for structural concerns, then you wouldn't even see it because we would fast track a permit and allow its removal. But that he remains the person remains the tree owner.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Given I see no other conversation, is anyone prepared to make a motion? Vice Chair Feck.
It's just a question. If he wanted to go and get the arborist report or do like some more investigation, could we just, I don't know if my terms are correct, kind of, is it without prejudice, kind of pause it so that he could gather that more information, maybe speak with you in more detail, and then he can come back if he, or something?
So we could make a motion to deny without prejudice, and that would allow the applicant to return without having to do the whole fee and everything again, yes. I'm sorry, let's, yeah, I think we're past the public comment question period, but thank you. Does- Can we deny without prejudice? Commissioner, and the answer was yes.
I feel like usually when we deny without prejudice, it's because something is in question or hasn't quite been addressed yet. And the Street Tree Advisory Committee went out and they didn't see any signs of ill health or damage or a possibility of it falling over. But I could be wrong. Mr. Slack?
Chair McGill and Commissioners, I think it would be completely acceptable to allow Mr. Peterkin to maybe do exploratory digging around the wall, things like that. If he was able to prove that there was like a really significant amount of root tissue that was pressing against the wall, then that would speak to concerns with root pruning. So I think if he wanted to do that, I think that that would be fine for the commission to provide that opportunity rather than require, application fees and resubmittal.
Okay. Well, if nobody else is prepared to make a motion, I will make a motion. And I will make a motion that we concur mostly with the Street Tree Committee and deny the tree removal on 234 Ulan Carp, but deny without prejudice. Commissioner Clark. Okay, we have a motion and a second. The motion is deny without prejudice. Any further discussion? Commissioner Aldana?
We could vote and
I would just like for him to understand the motion before he leaves.
Yes, if, assuming the motion passes,
Okay.
we'll make sure we'll have a final conversation about what this means and what your rights are. But the motion would be deny without prejudice means that if you actually bring in an arborist, do some further work, and come up with, have some evidence that that the Street Tree Committee was not aware of in terms of the amount of root damage, then you could come back to us without having to go through the whole application process and fee process again. Basically, you can come back without having to, re-up your $75. So,
I guess I don't have the authority to say anything else, but $75 is not a lot. I'm more concerned about damage to the wall.
right, and that,
Damage to
right. So let's, I know we're not going to relitigate that, but we will, we'll take the vote, and then, but it does allow you to do further work on your own, should you if this motion passes, it would allow you to do further work on your own, and then come back to the commission, basically a second pass. So at that point, so that will just stop there, and I'm going to go ahead and take it to a vote. Okay, so we have 5-1 approve. So what I'm going to suggest, you do have the right to appeal this, which means that you can appeal the decision to City Council. You have 10 days to do that should you wish to, but you also have, with the without prejudice means you can do further work if you want and then come back to this commission. What I would suggest is, Mr. Slack's got a couple more items with us before he's finished here, but I would suggest either now or at a later date, maybe you reconnect with Mr. Slack and he can help you understand what all of this means in terms of what you would or would not want to do, if that's all right with you? Okay, okay, thank you, thank you. All right, moving on to Deer Path Road.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the next item for review is a street tree designation change. This was at the request of the committee. The commission members might remember not too long ago, we looked at an application for several trees at a property on Deer Path Road. One of the conditions of approval for that application was that the applicant plant a new street tree. When the committee was on site and discussing options in terms of providing a recommendation to the commission, they made reference to the fact that New Zealand Christmas tree was again designated as the street tree in a pretty, it's like the Eucalyptus Hill neighborhood. It's a lot of like natural oak trees, and they just didn't think that it made practical sense to use the New Zealand Christmas tree on Deer Path Road. There currently are no street trees on Deer Path Road either, so the conditioned replant of a new street tree from the previous applicant will be the first street tree on the street technically. So we reviewed it last month, and again, given just the sort of like native oak area that exists within the Eucalyptus Hill neighborhood, the committee made a recommendation to change the street tree designation from New Zealand Christmas tree to Coast Live Oak on Deer Path Road.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Slack? All right, we have no speaker slips. Do we have, oops, I'm sorry, Commissioner Clark. Oh, okay, well, give me 2 seconds. Do we have anybody online wishing to speak?
We do not.
Okay. That takes us to discussion and/or motion. Commissioner Clark?
I'm prepared to make a motion to recommend that we do the Street Tree Advisory Committee to designate Quercus agrifolia as a designation for all Deer Path Road.
All right, Commissioner Aldana?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? Let's go to a vote. Okey doke, great, we are there. And that takes us to State Street median.
Chair McGill and Commissioners, the last Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review. This is also it's essentially a new street tree designation. So the previous master plan designation had Coast Live Oak for the 2,000 to 2,500 blocks. That's essentially from Mission to Constance on State Street. It did not include the pindo palms that occur in sets of 2 in the 6 medians that run from Mission all the way to Constance. There was a grassroots movement quite a while back from the residents on State Street to preserve the pindo palms, and during the city council meeting on February 28th, they actually designated the median, only the median, not any other part of the road as a historic designation. So in doing all of the research, a lot of these pindo palms were traced back to the turn of the century and directly related to even Edwin Orpit, who's a legendary sort of plant person in the community, helping to introduce this and recommend this species. And then a prominent landscape architect in the area at that time also helped to design this. So the historic designation essentially memorializes the use of the pindo palm in perpetuity in sets of 2 for these 6 medians. And in an attempt to kind of shore up things on our end, we reviewed this designation at the committee, and the committee unanimously supported the recommendation to change the State Street designation to include the use of pindo palms exclusively in sets of 2 throughout the medians for the 2,000 to 2,500 blocks of State Street.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Slack? All right, I have no speaker slips. Do we have anybody online?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Discussion or motion? All right, I will make a motion that we approve the the designation as for the State Street median for the Pindo Ponds. That was not very well said, but I hope you know what I meant. Okay. Thank you, I hope you'll reword it. All right, we have a garbled motion and a second. Discussion, okay, go to a vote. All right, and we are done. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Slack. And that brings us to we have the director's report and then Gulf Fund. Do we want to do it the other way around?
Chair McGill, no, let's go ahead and do the director's report
Okay.
and your Gulf Fund capital program report. Tina Nelson will give that to you.
Okay, great.
So just very quickly, as you can see in your report, we are offering spring break camps this year. We have done that in the past. They went on a bit of a hiatus thanks to the pandemic, which is in our rearview mirror, but still sort of there. Registration started on March 1st and actually closes tonight at 11:30. We have a number of different offerings that we're hoping families will take advantage of. Skate camp, Lobster Joe's full day and half day options, ocean and adventure explorers, beach volleyball camp, and youth evolution basketball and soccer. These are all programs that are also offered in the summer, so families that want to test drive the mid-spring break can certainly do that. Given the incredibly uncommon weather that we've had so far this calendar year. We're hopeful that next week will be fantastic for spring break, sunny and beautiful, and everyone will have a chance to get out and play. You already heard from the Youth Council and the fact that they're doing their Speak Out. They've been working very hard to pull that together, and it's going to be on Saturday, April 1st at the Palm Park Beach House from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Moving on to some other activities, if you've been in Shoreline Park lately, you will have noticed that around the entry to the stairs to the beach, where we have a gate structure called the Torrey Gate, Parks and Recreation staff recently worked with our Mesa Neighborhood Association and actually the Toba Sister City organization, as well as one of the project's original designers to bring that garden back with some modifications, given that today's climate's a little bit different than yesterday's climate. Plus, we also think more carefully about what we plant in coastal areas. It was originally planted in 1998 due to any number of factors, including the fact that landscapes do not last forever, aged out and really disappeared. We also have some eucalyptus trees left in Shoreline Park as well, and that doesn't help plant growth, as you can imagine. So working collaboratively, Omni raised $5,000, which is actually held by the Park Foundation, and Parks Division staff and Parks Department staff also took it through Architectural Board of Review, because it did require design review to move it forward, and then actually to acquire the plants and install the plants. And then hopefully they will be able to be sustained over a period of time. Winter storms, yet again. We had yet another series of them this week, and I think the last couple of weeks have really played out after the shocking event that we had in January. We're beginning to experience some of the sustained damage as a result of the extraordinary amount of moisture. We've lost more of our volleyball courts because Sycamore Creek continues to flow and move in a direction that takes out those courts, and it'll be some time before that sand is replenished. But more significantly, we've lost a number of very large trees. We were counting our blessings back in January when we hadn't lost so many trees, but now the soil is so saturated and we've had significant wind that we are seeing tree losses that's unprecedented for us. I think major kudos go out to the forestry staff because they've been working around the clock, and if they're not working, we're securing help from contractors to work. So there's work across the board, the entire team, to be able to respond to the tree losses. There's more to do. We're focusing on the highest priorities first, and crossing our fingers that we won't have too much more in the future. So things coming up, we've been talking about it a lot, but April is just around the corner and you will get your 2-year financial plan presentation from the department, and how we're planning to move into fiscal year 24 and 25, hard to believe. We're also going to bring forward a project we've been working on for a long time, Parma Park, the development of sustainable trail plan. Actually, construction, I believe, is going to begin in mid-April. This project has been under development for a number of years and was placed on hold, partly because of the drought, and then partly because of the pandemic. And now finally, we actually have enough wet soil to work with, and we have a contractor selected and in place that will be able to move forward with that and do a lot of work at Parma Park over the next calendar year. And we also have the city administrator's office and the city clerk's office has put together a training for all of our boards and commissions, and so they will be coming to speak to the commission at the May meeting. That's it, unless you have any questions.
You're not going to give us a spoiler alert on the training, huh?
I think, Chair McGill, the concept is, and it's been a long time, the city used to do annual trainings for its boards and commissions. Also used to invite the chairs and the vice chairs to an annual meeting where all the different vice chairs and chairs got together. Commissions and committee members have had the opportunity for Brown Act training, for other ways to sort of function as a public official, and this is an approach they're choosing to take, so it's the same training is given to boards and commissions across the city.
Okay, thank you. All right, and that then brings us to our final agenda item, which is the Gulf Fund Capital Fund Review. Ms. Nelson, welcome.
So Chair McGill and Commissioners, part of the reason why Tina Nelson is giving you this presentation is we didn't include it in our November presentation on capital for the general fund projects. And you'll have a lot to ponder over in April, so we thought we would give you a preview of golf capital. You will get the golf operating budget in April.
Good evening, Chair McGill and Commissioners. I am here to present to you the capital improvement program for the Golf Fund, the municipal golf course located on Macaw, off Las Positas. I think everybody is familiar that the golf course is an enterprise fund within the Parks and Recreation Department. The Santa Barbara Golf Club is dedicated to providing residents and visitors with an exceptional and affordable experience in a friendly, inclusive environment. Enterprise funds are self-funded, so any capital changes that are made to the golf course, improvements or revitalizing, is funded by revenues that are generated by the golf course. The golf course was built in 1958. It's an 18-hole facility that is user-friendly for all levels of golfers and offers an exceptional value in our community. The capital improvement program is established. It's an established comprehensive list of planned and projected capital needs. As we go through this process, we consider the timeline for design, permitting, and construction. We estimate the project costs, and then the projects are prioritized over the next 2 years with a longer range plan as well. Key considerations that are taken in, under the process are: what are the current projects and priorities? What are the ongoing unmet needs of the golf course, such as deferred maintenance, safety issues, community demand, what funding is available, and what are the plans for the future. The objectives of the capital improvement plan is to enhance our existing services at the municipal golf course, to preserve the existing resources, to develop new and repurpose existing structures where possible, and to always meet regulatory requirements such as health, safety, and to preserve the golf course for the future. Current projects that are underway for this fiscal year, 23, is a greenside bunker renovation. It was scheduled for March of this year, but with all the inclement weather that we've had, this will be pushed out probably until May. But right now, we are planning for hole 3, hole 16, and hole 17 to have complete bunker renovations. They'll be cored, the drainage will be corrected, they'll be relined and filled with new sand. And this has been funded by the Players Improvement Fund and with some funding from the golf course operator, Coursco. Also, for fiscal year 23, 2 key pieces of equipment will have been placed on order, and we are expecting delivery of those. One is a Green Master Triflex Hybrid Diesel Greens Mower, and the other is a rough mower. And these 2 pieces of equipment will be $165,317. And we are eagerly awaiting for their arrival, and they will enhance and greatly improve the quality of the greens and the rough at the golf course. Also on this calendar year is that we're removed from the golf course, and planting will begin in the next few weeks as soon as the weather conditions allow. But we have $15,000 set aside to begin reforestation of the golf course, and that this is a project that will be ongoing over the course of the next few years. We also replaced the exterior doors on the golf course. There's 2 doors to the pro shop, and all exterior restroom doors were replaced for $36,285. Also on the calendar for this fiscal year are maintenance yard improvements. We are in the process of having prefabricated shade structures developed, and we'll purchase those with the intent to have them installed at the beginning of next fiscal year. And once those shade structures are installed, there is a plan to repave the maintenance yard. And lastly, something that has been long in need and has been deferred for a few years is the installation of a new sewer lateral. Currently, the project is in design with an engineering company to restructure some problematic areas within the design of the existing sewer lateral so that it is long-term going to function the way it's supposed to. And as part of that, as you can see, it's a very long sewer lateral. So we will install 2-way cleanouts in accordance with what is required with plumbing code. And then also there are plans to install a below-ground grease trap for the restaurant. Right now, that is, they have above-ground grease traps, and long-term, the goal would be to have them below ground, which would support better use of the sewer lateral long-term. Currently, there are $70,000 in funds set aside for this project. Also, for this year, we have rental club replacements. We have 10 sets of Titleist rental clubs that are being purchased. The golf course is a custom fitting partner with Titleist. That is the brand that is sold at the Golf Pro Shop. And by having new equipment, it allows our customers to demo this equipment before making a purchase. So it's a good opportunity for people to try out the equipment before they make that commitment to purchase them. And we have $16,500 set aside for this project as well. This project will be funded by Coursco, the golf course operator, as part of their 2-year commitment for capital improvement. In fiscal year 24-28, these are the new projects that we have on the immediate horizon. First and foremost, we'll be presenting recommended projects for the Players Improvement Fund, but we do have $65,000 in projects set aside that is under advisement of the Golf Advisory Committee and will be presented to the commission next month in April. This fiscal year, this fund did pay for the renovation of the bunkers that will happen in May, and then last year they also contributed to this project. Planned projects for fiscal year '24 are ongoing bunker renovations, resealing and restriping of the parking lot, the installation of the maintenance shade structure, tree removal and replacement, purchase of a hydraulic workman vehicle, and 3 standard utility vehicles. So all told, we are planning on $300,000 in golf course improvements in fiscal year '24. In fiscal year '25, we have a greater projected commitment for the infrastructure improvement of $500,000, which would be allocated to tee box renovations, ongoing bunker renovations, reconstructing the number 13 green, tree removal and replacement. We are also going to begin a 2-phase project to assess and analyze how to maximize the driving range for users while also ensuring safety and making it as good as we can. So that is on the horizon. Also, cart path repairs. We're going to begin fixing areas of concern. We'll have some money set aside for a triplex vehicle, another golf maintenance vehicle, and Greens Air Fire. So that is $500,000. In 2026 and beyond, the plan is to reinvest another $1.9 million in the golf course, again with bunker renovations, repainting and recarpeting the pro shop, a putting green renovation, reforestation of the golf course with the tree removal and replacement, ongoing cart path repairs, a renovation of the large cart barn, irrigation upgrades. We have a new potable main line on the horizon to be installed and to replace the controllers. Phase 2 of the driving range renovation will be implemented, and power turf equipment purchases will be made on an annual basis. And beyond 2028, we have identified $677,000 in future needs. The Golf Fund reserves, I wanted to share where we are with this, and you can see that the golf course has continued to do well in the post-pandemic environment. And so we are forecasting to fund all of the next 2-year projects with revenues generated from the golf course and preserve the reserve funds for later use at a later time. In 2018, you can see that in red that the golf fund was below the required target to keep on hand. And as we have gone through 2019, 2020, and beyond, and you can see that this year we actually have $2.5 million in the golf course reserves with a surplus of $1.5 million. And we are continuing to project to have that in reserve at the golf course and continue to just do those projects with the revenue that it's generating and hope to see keep that money for the future. The next steps for this plan would be to have the Golf Course Advisory Committee make recommendations for the fiscal year '24 and '25 budget, which will then be presented to the commission in April, and then any fees and charges budget will go before the Finance Committee in May, and then City Council, and then an adoption of the budget in June. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much.
Chair McGill, if I could just add a few things, since we have some new commissioners who probably haven't learned a lot about the golf course. we're in a very different financial situation than we were many years ago. And so this is actually, last couple of years, well, last 5 years, we've been able to start reinvesting in the golf course. We look at those reinvestments and consider how they increase playability, meet the golf course visitor need, and balance that with, revenue generation, keeping in mind that every improvement doesn't necessarily mean you get more revenue as a result of the improvement. You just ensure the playability of the course. We have some not so exciting things we now need to take care of, like a sewer lateral, which we've needed to take care of for a long time. We have other not so exciting things like taking out dead trees, and we've had to do that recently. And then even our parking lot, if you take a look at that, you go, when are they going to repave this? Well, it's on the list somewhere, but it's really important that we reinvest in the equipment to actually maintain the golf course. And so there's been a focus on that as well. There was one more thing I was going to mention, but I've forgotten what it is, so happy to turn it over to any questions that you have.
Yeah, I just have a couple. I don't have a sense of how many or few this is, but I was struck by 50 dead trees. And, taking out 50 dead trees and planting trees, and yet continuing to take out dead trees and plant trees. And it just seemed like a lot of dead trees. Is that unusual, or is that just a cumulative, it's been a delayed project?
I'll take it.
Do you want to answer it?
Yeah. Chair McGill, Commissioners, it is an accumulation of dead trees, the drought conditions and the salty conditions of the soil. Originally when the golf course was planted, it wasn't necessarily done with the long-term, thought of what is going to thrive in that environment. And the golf course does lose trees annually, but the ongoing drought conditions and, not having the funds available to take out the trees collectively, when we did have that money, it was determined that it would be a good opportunity to remove the dying trees and begin reforestation with trees that will thrive in the habitat. So that was all taken into consideration. All the new trees that will be planted were done at the advisement of our city arborist, Mr. Slack, and we're very excited to be able to do this.
The only thing I would add, Chair McGill and Commissioners, is that when the golf course was established, we did not use recycled water. So there are trees that grew up with fresh water and now have to adjust to the conditions of recycled water, which often have a higher salt content. And then the drought, of course, as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And I guess things like programming and and expanding access to golf and things like that, that would be more what we would talk about next time. Yeah. And I do have another question, but I'll turn it over to Commissioner Aldana first.
Regarding the sewer lateral, how many feet? How long is that?
I thought it was long.
Lineal.
150 plus.
Chair McGill, Commissioner Aldana, that's a great question. We are actually in the process of trying to get film for the entire sewer lateral so that we have that, but we estimate that lateral to be about 1,000 feet.
And that's in the street, obviously, right?
It is actually connects from the top of the parking lot where the restaurant is and then runs down the maintenance road and then connects with the city sewer system by the golf maintenance building. So it's not on the city street.
Okay, but you're responsible for that 1,000 feet.
Yes, we are. There are 2 other sewer laterals on the golf course that over the course of the next few years will also begin the process of filming those to get exact measurements and look at the condition of those. Originally, it was estimated that the sewer laterals would last about 80 years, but really the life expectancy has proven to be about 100 years. And we are quickly approaching that number with the golf course being established in 1958. We do have a little bit of time, but it is a project that we are looking at very closely as we work with the sewer lateral in question.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Commissioner Clark.
I've had this question, and you seem like the right person to ask, but I'm sure you're aware of the hundreds of thousands of golf balls that have been washing up on the beach following the storm surges. Are those coming from our golf course? And if so, is there any plan for like future mitigation?
Chair McGill and Commissioner Clark, that's a good question. Simone Herrera, our Parks Manager, could probably identify that better than myself, but we have spoken about this recently. Some of those golf balls are most certainly from the municipal golf course, but also, you know, with the south flowing currents, we do, feel that a lot of those golf balls are also from Sandpiper Golf Course and Glen Annie as well. So they sort of all flow south, but most definitely some are from the municipal golf course.
So we can table any further discussion on that till next month when Mr. Herrera is here.
Yes, thank you.
I had one last question, and it's a little bit, I was looking at that graph of revenue, and I was looking at the 2019 kind of slope of the curve in revenue, and then we have the pandemic, whoop, whoop, and then we go into revenue growth again, and I noticed that you are, it's subtle, but it's real that the slope of the curve is different in the post-pandemic growth versus the pre-pandemic growth, and then you extend that straight line. And my question is that, I mean, you really are expecting to grow at a higher rate over time than you did pre-pandemic, and what happens if that's not right?
Chair McGill and
Third to
Commissioners.
the last slide.
This one right here with the
Yeah,
Gulf Fund
yeah, that one,
reserves?
exactly.
So what you'll see is twofold. One is that historically we have, the city and the department has not been able to set aside or invest in capital infrastructure to the degree that we are forecasting to do over the course of the next 10 years. So the last 2 years, we contributed $228,000 in each year to capital reinvestment. In fiscal year '24, the plan is for $300,000, and in fiscal year '25, $525,000. So what we forecast is not as much money going into the reserve. We are forecasting some.
That's not the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I
No, that's quite
misunderstood.
all right. My question is actually on the financial performance, the revenues on the financial performance. So if you look at 2019 to 2020, you've got a fairly flat curve. Then the pandemic happens and, you know, everything whoops up. And then if you go out of the pandemic from 23 and beyond, you're showing a greater increase year on year in revenues than you did pre-pandemic. So revenues, not expenditures. And so my question is, do you really, you know, you're saying that it's going to be relatively improved over pre-pandemic, effectively in perpetuity. And, you know, is that, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, are you sure? And then, and what happens if it's not right?
Chair
Yeah.
McGill, thank you.
What
for
happens
the-
if you go back to more closer to pre-pandemic, which is the discussion where you were having a couple years ago?
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for that clarification. I
Sure,
apologize
sure.
for
No problem.
misunderstanding. We will be addressing that in more detail at next month's meeting when we go over the golf course revenues. But the short answer is the forecast for golf is to continue to project revenue growth over the course of the next at least 5 years. So yes, for now, we are projecting continued growth in revenue at the golf course.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Chair McGill and Commissioners, you know, the projection is a projection, and
I know, that's.
you know,
hence the
one of the
second half
things that I think we feel fairly confident in is that we have a golf course operator that operates 27 golf courses. We're monitoring the golf industry very closely. We have a long history of adjusting as needed. One thing you will notice is that cost is going to continue to go up, just like anything else. And so your revenues need to meet your expenses. And the goal in this sort of next 5 years is hopefully we will continue to trend positively, which will allow us to do some reinvestment in the golf course. And then we may find that we have to slow that down and we have to be more mindful of where the extra funds, if there are extra funds, are available. The one thing I would point out is that the reserve policy target number is based on 25% of the operating budget. So as the operating budget goes up, the policy target goes up. Just like the general fund, it's the same target, 10% for, I always get them confused, 10% for disaster reserves and 15% for emergency funds, but either way, that's the general approach that the city takes. And we have not been in that situation for some time.
Okay. Absolutely. All right, thank you. I'm not seeing any further speakers, so I think we will stop that. And thank you very much for that great report, and we'll revisit it again next month.
My pleasure, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and that takes us to old business, of which I see none. New business, of which I see none. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting. And everybody, as you know, next month will not be such a short one.
What is the date of our meeting next month?
It is, I don't know.
Is it 26?